Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today I'm having a look at a horse named League of Shadows, who's owned by Colleen. First thing I would like to say is the next time you do a video, be sure and turn your phone the other way, because that's why we just have this little strip of a piece of picture here. If you turn your phone the other way, then you'll get the full screen effect. And that would make all of this easier just for the next time around. So getting off here in the walk, and a couple of things I always have to say is, looking at the footing that you're working on here, it's good that you're keeping this horse in a walk. It looks like quite hard ground, and of course it's stubbly as it's got little bits of grass growing up in it, which can really catch a horse's toe. So they have to get used to this. Now, of course, if this is what they're on all the time, they may be adapted to it. Other horses, if you tried to work them on this kind of footing, might get sore very quickly. So I can't really see from the video, I can't get enough pictures to see if he has shoes on. If he doesn't, I would suggest that most horses, unless he's lived in this in his whole life, would probably need shoes to be able to work on this type of footing to keep his feet sound, because it doesn't take much to get them sore. And when the ground is that hard, they hit one little rock or something or stub a toe and you've got a problem. So just something to think about there. And of course, you'd want to keep it slow and steady as you're doing here, and not push it too much on this kind of footing. But I'm starting to see a pretty good walk out of this horse. He has moments when it's there. Even here, it's not bad. It's fairly rhythmic. He's stepping up, but he isn't stretching enough, so we don't get enough swing. But as he stretches down, we start to get it. He tends to want to slow down a little bit when he starts to stretch a little bit, and that's kind of normal. And of course, he's got grass out in front of him, so he may well want to reach down and grab a nibble from time to time. In those cases, we just have to keep them moving and trying to keep them a little more active. But I do like, even when, he brings his head up like this, you're not seeing, a lot of stiffness in the other side of his neck. Other than the fact he loses his rhythm there, but he's not totally going upside down on you, that is, and just letting the back end fall out. Now it's getting quite slow now, and once again, you see how when it does begin to slow down, everything begins to kind of fall out the back a little bit, as I was just saying. So the more we keep this forward energy flowing forward is what we want to keep, and that's better there. And once again, at least there, I don't see a lot of thickness in the underside of his neck, so he's not just totally pulling with his shoulders, though we would like to have a little more swing than he's got there. And again, at times, he gets to a good place here. Keeping that rhythmic act there. You see as he starts to stretch down, that starts to look a little better. Very nice there. And so there he kind of goes down. Is he just smelling the ground and thinking about eating some grass? But he does step a little deeper under himself when he does stretch the neck down a little bit, even if he's just going after grass there a little bit. So that's better. But we want to keep that neck stretched down and keep him going in the same active rhythm is obviously our goal here. One thing that you can do, as just noticing here, is just trying to keep the slack out of your line as much as you can, so that you don't have a lot of communication problems, in the sense that we get too much slack and then the horse does something and we can't make a correction. So just the weight of the rein, just like when we ride, is always what we're looking for, just keeping the slack out so that we can respond when we need to. Same as when we ride, that is, we want to keep contact, but contact never means pulling back against the mouth of the horse. It just means an active, alive contact with the mouth, but it's never stiff and rigid. It never attempts to, as we see many people, they think they're getting horses on the bit and they hold them and get until they give, and where they usually give is back in the neck and not in the jaw and pull at all. Now that's starting to look really good there as he starts to stretch down there. That's much better. So if we can keep that and then keep him a little more active while he stretches that deep, is just what we're looking for. And you can see that the effect of raising and lowering his head and neck has. Every time the head comes up, he starts to look at something, the back end kind of falls out behind. So your job is just to keep this all going the way you're doing. It's coming along quite nicely. It's amazing how difficult it is to actually get a good and consistent and rhythmic walk when you really start thinking about it and watch them. And how many steps do you really get that he clicks it off like a metronome? And that's what we're looking for. That's when they really begin to develop, when that rhythm, that tells you that they're beginning to flow over their backs, and then everything starts to happen quite quickly. Or as quickly as it can, let's say. Looking a little better there at times, and he brings his head back up. So Well, most of this is kind of the same kind of thing in that he's coming up and down in both directions. I don't see a lot of difference between the two directions, which we'll switch to in a couple of minutes. But you're doing all the right things, just trying to encourage those moments. You might want to work a little closer to him so that you're walking a little bit more behind him. If you watch me working on some of my the horses that I work on, like Chamois, and look how consistently I stay in the center of my circle and where I can keep moving the horse forward. So always being sure that you're close enough to do that. Some horses need a little bit of encouragement from the whip. It shouldn't take a lot of that, however. If it does, there may be something more of a problem there. It's, again, it is the nature of a healthy horse to want to move. That's the nature of horses. So, and of course, why we like to ride them, because if they feel good and they've been trained correctly, they're willing to do a lot for us. But if they just have that attitude like every step is a pain, then we never want to force it. So if you have to force a horse to take a couple of steps, there's probably something wrong with it, even if that is just being so out of shape that it can't move. Which can happen to horses just like it does to people. But that was pretty nice. It's getting more consistent all the time. I'd like to see this stretch deeper. It would be interesting to see what he does if you're at the point where you could put a surcingle on him and begin to put some side reins on and see if he will stretch into the contact with the side reins. But notice, like just right there, every time that head comes down a little bit, all of a sudden the walk is more free, isn't it? So it's always about that. That's what we're looking at. So many people today get hung up in what the head and neck is doing, and they forget about the horse still has to move, and that's what this is all about. So that's why we always have to gauge, however correct anything we're doing, is what effect is it having on the correct movement of the horse once we know what correct movement is. Very many people today are fooled by these very expensive, flashy moving horses that have these amazing hocks that just seem to have legs coming out of everywhere and going in every direction. And those horses can fool people because they look like something is happening even when it's not. But adhering to that idea that we always have to watch the two ends of the horse and be sure they're swinging together. So if you watch many of those fancy movers, you'll see that often the front leg is moving ahead of the beat of the hind leg very slightly. And if you can see that disparity there between the two ends, then you know that there's being damage done to the horse over time. And of course, that's the only issue. That's really starting to look good there. It's always interesting, I think, to watch horses when they're trying to relieve themselves like it was there. You notice how he really kind of lifted his back up, and they have to, and that's also part of this training, is that horses that are trained this way usually have good bowel habits, if you will, that they go to the bathroom easily. Horses that can't relieve themselves, especially if someone's on their back, is often a sign that there's real problems. Because the horse, as you see, when they do relieve themselves, they have to lift their back up a little bit. That's what they do. And very often as soon as we get them to lift their back, they will immediately want to relieve themselves. And that's a good sign. We always want to encourage that to happen, let's say. But this is looking a little better. Now the walk is getting a little swingier and a little more active. This side is a little easier just to see his neck because the mane hangs on the other side, but you can clearly see his muscling here. And once again, the underside is not real tense. I would like to see a more fleshing out of the top line there, the top part of the neck, as he develops a little more strength. But at least he's not just totally pulling with the shoulders. Whenever you see a horse that has a very big underside of the neck that gets very tense as they work, that tells you right away that they're pulling with the shoulders. And if you watch a lot of horses that have been roll curved, that is, the necks have been forced over, you notice even though they sort of look like they're round, somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at because the neck is all bent over, but look at the underside of those horses' necks and you'll see it's always very, very tense. So I think you're making some good improvements with this horse. Continue on. I'd like in your next video to see him trot a little bit and see what happens there. But once again, be careful on this footing. As I said, I can't tell whether you have shoes on or not. Because sometimes, as I said, working horses on the kind of footing you're doing there could get a horse sore pretty quickly if they're not used to it. So again, not a bad rhythm there. You could kind of see him pulling with his shoulders there for a moment. This just sort of came around that last little bit there. So as the neck comes out, the shoulder starts to swing more freely. So when you get that impression like just a moment ago, where he just really sort of dug in and pulled with his shoulders, that's what we don't want to see. What we want to see is what you're seeing here, where the shoulder just really swings free because the thrust of the hind leg pushes the back up and actually frees the shoulder to swing freely, as opposed to have to draw its weight and itself and the horse's weight forward with its shoulders. That's looking much better there. So notice as the neck stretches down, how the top part of the neck seems to flesh out and fill out. That's what we want. So that shows you that those muscles are the ones being engaged, just like your biceps, you know. When you flex your biceps, your triceps don't engage, and vice versa. So learning to recognize the right muscles when they're starting to activate, like right there. See how we start to see the length of the neck and we start lighting up, and see how really relaxed the underside of the neck got right there and how rhythmic the walk got. That's what you're looking for. So maintaining that, or even a little deeper. But the rhythm tells you the whole story. Once again, watch as his head comes up. You see how the back sort of stops moving, tends to fall out behind. As he begins to activate the back end and push, then we see him beginning to lift a little bit through the shoulders while the neck goes down. That's one thing that's hard for people to understand, is that we're actually lifting the shoulders when we get not the shoulders, we're lifting the withers. When the horse stretches down, it pulls the withers up through the shoulders, and the horse will actually get taller. And as I said, that's part of the maturing process of any horse. And if it has never had that process because it has never moved correctly in its life, that will happen even if the horse is 20 years old, which is the good news. So we saw those moments there when we really got to where we wanted you to be, and that put that in your mind, that moment there that I mentioned a couple of moments ago when he really got the neck out there and we saw the top of the neck really beginning to swell. That's what we're looking for. I see you activating the back end now, getting a little more activity. And it's very normal that this could be a little easier on one direction than the other. Remember, until horses' backs lift, they're always crooked to one side. That's the only way you can straighten a horse, is getting the back to lift, so the back and the spine straighten. Then the horse can be pretty equal on all four legs. But until that happens, they're always going to be slightly bent to one side or the other. Just like a person who's never straightened their back in their whole life, right? They're usually going to be cocked to one side or the other. Same thing is true of horses. So we've had some really good moments here, especially the one I pointed out there. That's really what I'm looking for. That was really good. Trying to find that moment. There he starts to go there now. His neck starts to get out a little bit longer. Remember next time to turn your phone the other way so we get a little wider picture. That'll give us a better shot. But you're doing a good job here. Keep up the good work. Keep working for that stretch that I pointed out a moment ago when you really got the neck out there. If you can get it for one moment, you'll ultimately be able to get it over and over again. That's the whole idea. And reward him when he does. Really nice. Now that's starting to get there. Once again, notice how the walk frees. As the horse starts to bring that neck forward, it pushes the back up. Great job. Look forward to your next video.